Hi, I'm Betty Bickers, a psychotherapist in private practice in Orange County, California. This video addresses coping strategies or coping skills for dealing with severe bouts of depression. Now, when a person is very depressed, very often they have no energy, no motivation, no interest in anything, and sometimes they can hardly get out of bed. Now, in these extreme situations of depression, we really want to encourage people to do some action or take some form of activity to increase their energy level, even if only slightly. This might be encouraging them to get out of bed, to wash their face, brush their teeth, change their clothes, maybe even take a shower. But basically, for people that really cannot even imagine doing anything, we want to still push them to fight their depression. Therapists often are not liked by their clients at this moment in time because we actually are encouraging you to do and insisting that you do the very thing you don't want to do. When a person is very depressed, they see very little meaning in anything. And the last thing they want to do is be pushed to do something. But this is where therapists have to act as coaches. We've got to encourage our clients to maybe try 5 minutes of an activity. If you're still feeling miserable, give yourself permission to stop doing that activity. But to consider getting out of bed to water some plants, feed their dog or their cat or any other pet they have, and to basically just do one thing to see if that gets them moving a little bit. Inactivity and stagnation are fertile ground for depression to get worse. So by taking any action or getting in any physical movement, that helps move the depression a little bit. Now, these coping strategies are for when you are literally immobilized by your depression. For some people, putting on music that they love, but only music that they love, can get them feeling a little bit better. If you are having any suicidal thoughts, and this is perhaps the first time you've experienced suicide, or perhaps this is something that you deal with from time to time, consider calling a suicide helpline if talking to somebody is what you need to do. For many of us, we have a friend or two that we can call, maybe a relative that we can call when we're feeling really bad and be honest about what's going on. But for some of us out there, we don't have that person, or we don't want to let them know really how bad we're feeling. So calling a stranger on a suicide helpline is sometimes the best, strongest activity a depressed person can do. So keeping a suicide line number around the house is a good thing. One can always bring it up on the computer or on their phone, but I actually encourage you to keep that number available to you if this is something that you suffer with. Please be aware that if you try these coping strategies and you're not able to feel any better, we might be looking at you needing a brief hospitalization. Most psychiatric hospitalizations these days are just very brief and for stabilization purposes for the most part. We want to encourage people to take care of themselves so they don't have to end up in the hospital. So please consider whether or not your suicidal thoughts are something that are scaring you. Are you finding yourself nervous around sharp objects? Do you go in the kitchen and actually look at the knives or other things with some thought about using them on yourself? These are extreme times, and extreme measures are needed. So sometimes calling a friend, even when we don't want to, is necessary to have somebody take care and look after us for that day, perhaps. I don't want to scare anybody. The thing with serious depression is if you can use a healthy coping strategy, usually your mood can improve a little bit. When we fall back into using ineffective coping strategies like drugs or alcohol, it actually increases the likelihood that we're going to act out in some self-harming way, or perhaps a dangerous way towards someone else. So I encourage you, if you or a loved one is going through something like this and you need to dial 911, to have the police get involved or see if someone is able to pull it together when the police arrive. That's a major test in knowing whether or not somebody can shape up or not. So in terms of serious depression, we really want to encourage you to not do anything rash. And in some situations, if turning around, going back to bed is the safest thing to do, then maybe that is the best coping strategy at that time. Leaning on any negative coping strategy, even sleeping too much, can cause your depression to just get worse. But I am encouraging you to take a look at sometimes the lesser of two evils when you're super depressed. This is an awful time, and to be aware also that depression lies to us. We believe awful things about ourselves and the world and other people when we're extremely depressed. It's important to have access to some spiritually enlightening material or some comforting readings that you have that can remind you how you can think when you're not so depressed. Now, depression does respond to action. So if you could take a walk, get up and maybe even consider moving around the house in terms of doing a little bit of cleaning or even maybe a little movement to music, otherwise known as dancing, you might feel better. So please monitor yourself when you're this bad and try to practice a couple of healthy coping strategies. And until next time, I hope that you can stay well, and I'll see you next time.